Death curse. My brother had a girlfriend, but my grandma had never wanted her to be her granddaughter-in-law from the start. One day, he told the family about marrying his girlfriend and got a strong objection from my grandma. His girlfriend used to be our neighbor in the past at our old apartment, and he was very conflicted. He shouted out, "Why not her? Was there anything about her that my family didn't like and accept? When she was our neighbor, there was no one complained about her." He wanted to know why the family repeatedly objected her to be a part of the family. They said they would never let her entering the house. My mother also spoke up as well. There was not only my grandma, but also my mom didn't want his girlfriend to be a part of the family. The two great women of my family were always too determined about that. We had no idea why they strongly objected to the wedding. Finally, my brother wanted to clear up the reason behind that. Why mom and grandma didn't accept his girlfriend. Everything had a reason behind it. And so, my grandma started to tell him why both she and my mom didn't want him to marry his current girlfriend. My mom was afraid that my grandma was too angry to calm down, so she tried to comfort her. My mom told my grandma not to get that angry. My grandma said that she didn't want to lose my brother, so she would tell him everything. After seeing my grandma was that angry, my mom told my brother to sit back, and so my brother obediently sat down on the chair next to my grandma. He was very exacerbated, but he didn't want to piss my mom and my grandma off. After my grandma was getting a bit calmer, my mom came and sat opposite me. On behalf of grandma, she started to tell us why they objected to the wedding that bad. It was all begun 20 years ago. 20 years ago, my family had lived in an urban planning area project, where my grandpa and my dad had been all working on. Someone happily accepted the compensation and moved out, but some of them didn't want to leave. There was a woman named May, even though her house was pretty old and damaged already. The compensation fee was pretty attractive to her at that moment, but she didn't want to leave and let people come to dismantle her house. She always picked up a wooden stick and stood at the front door to guard the house. She threatened people not to come closer to her house. People said that she had a child, but she claimed that his kid had gone missing. She was afraid that if people dismantled her house, her kid would not get back to the house. Later on, she would never have a chance to see her kid, so she kept guarding the house. At that moment, people had tried to calm her down. They told her to put the stick down and didn't make hurt anyone. They said that that woman didn't accept the fact that her child didn't go missing. He just passed away. Her neighbors repeatedly convinced her that she had to face the fact that her house had been ruined seriously, just like the other houses in town at that moment. She would not be able to live in that house forever, so she better took the compensation and find another house to live. Anyways, her son had. She was very stubborn, hold the stick tightly, and didn't take anyone's words. She yelled at them that she didn't believe in them. They were all trash-talked. Her son was still alive and healthy somewhere. He just went missing and soon, he would get back to her. One of the neighbors didn't stay still. He shouted out to her that her son had died in years. How came he returned to her? Please accept the reality. May heard of those cruel words. She was getting even angrier. She picked up the stick and came busting into the one who just talked, and cursed him out. That was trash-talked. Who had died, bullshit. She repeatedly said that her son just went missing, and surely he would return home, while she put up the fight with the man who just talked with her stick. Seeing her reaction, people were all supposed that the woman had gone insane. No one had a gut to come any closer to and convince her. Everyone wanted to stay away from her. Ever since then, May went crazy. She was unable to sleep nor eat. She held the stick tightly and guarded it at the door for days. At that moment, no one wanted to come any closer to her. Her neighbors all wanted to avoid her. She kept guarding the house and murmured that she didn't allow anyone to destroy her house. Her son was just naughty and went missing. He was about to go home in no time. He definitely was going to return home. After 4 days of starving herself and keeping her not to sleep, as a human being, she got exhausted, and eventually, she had been blacked out on the 4th day. Even though she was unconscious, she still kept murmuring that her son would get back to find her. She didn't allow anyone to destroy the house. Even everyone had been given up on her, but they were unable to let her being unconscious like that. They gathered around and picked her to the hospital for her good. After May passed out and had been picked up at the hospital, she could not stand at the front door to guard the house. People came to dismantle the house and continued the project. Finally, people in town had a relief. That crazy horrible woman had kept from away from the compensation fee. They said that finally, they could receive the compensation once all of the houses in the area had been dismantled. Meanwhile, my mom had taken the responsibility to take care of that crazy woman in the hospital. She was still unconscious, passed out in the bed sick. My mom was standing there and discussing with the doctor about her situation. The doctor said that the woman had a mental issue symptom. She needed to be brought to the psychiatric hospital as soon as possible. The longer she held back and did not take her treatment, the more dangerous she was. While my mom was talking to the doctor, at the bed sick, all of a sudden, the crazy woman jolted awake and screamed aloud that please don't destroy her house. That made my mom and the doctor surprised. No one could think that she awakened at that moment. That was crazy. After screaming aloud, the woman started to take off the needle in her arm. My mom and the doctor were very worried about her. They tried to stop her and calm her down. My mom and the doctor tried their best to stop her, but they were unable. The crazy woman tried her best as well to push my mom and doctor away from her. She ran for her life towards her house. At that moment, her house was dismantling. If she returned there, she would try to stop the dismantling crew. My mom ran after her and wanted to stop the crazy woman. She reached her house. The crew leader had stopped her outside. He told her that it was really dangerous inside and she better back up. The house was nearly dismantled all out. There were only a few pieces left. She struggled with the man in front of her. She went nuts already. She bit the man in front of her strongly in the face until the flesh on his face felt off. He had to yell out. Then she ran towards the construction. At the moment, the truck nearly broke the wall from behind. She ran and stood there. She yelled out for them to stop with all of her powers. The crazy woman's sudden reaction made the truck's driver surprise. He slammed the brakes on, but that was too late. The truck had banged into the wall. At that moment, the wall collapsed to the crazy woman's body. Seeing the tragedy, my mom and some of the neighbors hurriedly came to her and shouted out, asking someone to come and help them out. People picked up the bricks one by one. The woman was under those bunch of bricks. After taking all of the bricks out of the crazy woman's body, people saw her body was full of blood. She already put her foot in the grave. Seeing the woman's tragedy, people were very mournful for her. My mom held the woman's head on her knees. The crazy woman pointed to the neighbors with her little voice. She was barely breathing and trying to say her last words. Those people in front of her were all evil. And out of the blue, she yelled out that she cursed all of them. She cursed that everyone there would not have a peaceful life afterward. Those men in front of her, and all the men related to that area. After yelling out the scary curse, she passed away. The crazy woman had no relatives, so even she had put a curse on them, they still got sympathized with her. They had helped her a burial. After emptying the area, the builder had spent small land to erect an apartment and sell it at a reasonable price for the people. People were very excited about the new apartment. As time flew by, everything about the crazy woman had faded into memories. Even though the new apartment was very spacious, but the sound insulation was not good, our neighbors kept arguments very often, and we had to hear them out all the time. We were exhausted with them. That was Zhang's family. His wife always got a suspicion that her husband had an affair behind her back, so she put up the argument all the time. That day, while they were arguing, all of a sudden, we heard a break for a few seconds. Then the wife yelled out her husband's name. There was likely something wrong with them. My family heard of that and realized that something bad had happened to them. We stopped eating and ran out to check them out. Right after went outside and looked down, we stood there frozen. Zhang landed on the ground. There was a pool of blood under his body. There was no one could explain if he jumped out or someone had pushed him out. Zhang's death made the apartment busy with discussion for a while, and eventually, it had been settled down. Until there was another incident that had happened then, that was the Peng family downstairs. In his spare time, Peng had taken his son out to teach his son how to drive. At that moment, their car got hit by a truck. They all were hit severely and died. Their bodies looked very scary. Zhang and the two of Peng men's dead were worried people in the apartment. They started to recall what the crazy woman had cursed them before she passed away. Was that a coincidence or her curses had happened already to them? There were 4 dead people already. My grandpa didn't believe that the curse could be applied. He thought that was people just scared of themselves. He calmed people down that all were coincident, how that crazy thing could happen. Then, the creepiest thing happened a few days later. There was an explosion at my dad and my grandpa's workplace. My grandpa was unable to make it out of the wood. The others had been all rescued, but not my grandpa. That was unfortunate. My dad was lucky. He had been rescued. After then, my grandma and mother believed strongly that the woman's curse had applied to the area. Eventually, my grandpa's funeral had been ended. After that tragedy, my grandma took my mom and my father out of that cursed apartment. After leaving that area, my family had been settled down peacefully in years at the current place. At the moment, my grandma and my mom believed that they had escaped from the curse already. My dad had died because of a life-threatening sickness. After my dad's death, my grandma had a hard decision and advised my mom to remarry to change our family name. Hearing my grandma's words, my mother opposed to her, since my dad just passed away, how she could step another step at that moment. My grandma explained that there was no other choice to save her grandsons. She surely didn't want my mom to remarry anyone. However, in years they had moved out of that cursed place. Her son had still died. It proved that the curse had happened. Every single man who related to that area would die sooner or later. My mom had to remarry to change our fate. Even though my grandma's plan sounded super crazy to save our life, my mom's remarriage was the only plan my grandma could think of. Finally, my mom agreed to follow the plan. She found a kind man to be our stepfather. He was really kind to us. We had a profound bond as if he was our biological father and son. My mom and my grandma had sacrificed for us to escape from the death curse and been through a lot. They wanted us to live a long, happy life. My brother's girlfriend was a daughter of Zhang. How could they let him marry that girl and ignited the curse once again? My brother and I got frozen at that moment. We had never heard of the curse earlier. After hearing the whole thing, my big brother kept silent for a while. Finally, he took my grandma and my mom's advice. He had broken up with Zhang's daughter. I once asked him if he broke up with his girlfriend because he was scared about the curse. He replied that he just respected what my grandma and my mom had sacrificed for us. A few years later, both of us had married and had our own family. We lived our happy and healthy life afterward.